All right, I think we can begin now. So, this is the panel one of the Indian Conference on AI and Law. We had some amazing sessions on November 22nd, two interesting committee sessions featuring seven legal tech startups or companies, as we call them, um, mostly from India, and one from Italy. It was a great time around, and I think today and the second panel we have in these panels, we will have some more integral policy conversations around certain aspects of AI strategization, AI hype, AI regulation, and so forth. So, Kapil will be moderating this session. So, Kapil, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Abhivadan. Uh, yeah, so great opportunity to be part of this esteemed panel discussion. So, yeah, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I once again welcome everyone. We have an esteemed panelist that is focused where we have a lot of technology and technology to law. So this is going to be a great discussion going ahead. So, as your moderator, I'm extremely honored to anchor this discussion on the topic that not only shapes the future of AI in our country, but also echoes the global dialogue on responsible AI and development and governance. Today, we find ourselves at the crossroads of innovation and regulation, navigating a landscape where promises of artificial intelligence are matched only by the challenges it poses. The draft bill that Abhivardhan and his team have come up with is very laudable because, unlike unlike Singapore or any other nations, where there's a concerted effort from private and public, in India, it's not the same. So that way, I think Abhivardhan and so it's a kudos to Abhivardhan and team for coming up with such a comprehensive bill that has covered a variety of aspects. Very interestingly, insurance is another very important domain that has been covered in this bill, which is not present in any other global regulations, at least the drafts that we have seen so far. So yeah, the draft bill we're about to dissect holds the potential to pave way for the harmonious coexistence between technological process and societal well-being. In our um, pursuit of, comprehensive understanding, insularity should not just cloud our decision-making process when it comes to regulating AI. Just as AI knows no borders, neither should our regulatory frameworks. We will draw some inspiration and insights from international counterparts, notably the EU AI Act and the recent US's executive order on AI. So the global community is engaged in a collective effort to balance the transformative power of AI with safeguards that protect that protect our values and principles. Now, as we dive into the intricacies of this AI development and regulation bill 2023 by ISAIL, we should aim to focus on aspects that will synthesize our local aspirations with international benchmarks. We should also aim not we should not just aim for mere compliance, but for a framework that propels our nation into a leadership role in the responsible development and deployment of artificial intelligence. So now, looking forward for a riveting exploration of the future, where technology meets governance, and together we define the contours of AI landscape and benefits all. So, let me start with Abhivardhan, where Abhivardhan, you've been in around this industry for, you've been around in this legal tech, AI, technology law for the last 5, 6 years, right? So, so how do you see the development? How did you start the work, and what was the vision? What was the mission back then? How did AI as a technology or the regulations that were present back then globally?
So, interestingly, first of all, thank you so much, Kapil, for your delightful remarks. When I had written my first book on AI and international law, which was completed in 2019, I was literally a newcomer. Now, literally 6 months or 8 months before March 2019, um, the very first Niti Aayog AI strategy had come up. It was a strategy that belonged to its own era, of its own time. After the 2019 elections, a lot of political mileage was needed to create a sense of technology governance. In 2018, the discussions for the personal data protection bill had started. And then, of course, when around 86 objections were raised to the IT minister himself about the features of the bill, because the bill was not going to be limited to some 30 sections, right? It was just like, I don't know, 50 or 60 or more sections. But of course, that bill, of course, couldn't go ahead for its complicated issues and policy paralysis problems, which is why we had a compact bill with a lot of features where it says prescribed by law, right? Now, the AI startup ecosystem has been growing well in India. There are some very genuine startups in India who might not be that much popular or who might not be that much featured in the power lists and all those things, but they're actually doing some great work. And even at a big level at Tech Mahindra and others, there are some AI ecosystems being created who are trying to do impart and make changes, at least in some sectors, if not a lot of them. At the level of government, which is DPI, of course, it's a different journey altogether. Which is to say that the Bhashini initiative is one successful initiative I remember where AI has been used. Um, of course, using Ayushman Bharat Health Mission or the Aadhaar stack under the India Stack initiative, they can use AI, in a much reasonable way if done wisely. I think there is obviously a very good intent out there. The one problem which we see usually is that when such work has to be required when it comes to regulation, of course, before COVID, I would not have, or nobody would have been so agile about AI regulation. Because you see, I mean, from a B2C point of view, because India is a very volatile B2C market, the best example of democratization of AI, as we know, is either social media marketing or you have something like chatbots in banking, finance, and all those things, even to an extent in fintech, but that is again a different issue. So that is the most basic and standardized way we know how AI has penetrated into India. Of course, there are things which are even beyond that, but they are again at a very institutional level and they're not so much public or publicized or publicly aware in a bare eyes perspective, right? So, I mean, 5 years ago, we would not have expected if Zoom would have existed. I don't know when Zoom started its foundation. I might not remember right now. But if, let us say, it were 2018 and we had Zoom, Zoom would not have integrated AI at that time because it was not the time of the day. It was not a technological possibility. Now they have integrated AI into their, analyzing of captions and many things. I think even MS Teams does that, if I'm right. Even other platforms do it. So I think obviously it's an evolutionary feat which takes time. Um, of course, when we had a demonstration of use cases by Saurabh from Samta Law, Sohas Balega, who himself is a lawyer, NLS graduate, who actually developed a very interesting use case on contract analysis and argument generation. It turns out that in India, now just a soft touch approach of regulation is needed at the level of AI safety, which at least gives you a framework to go ahead. Because in the proposal for the Digital India Act, the minister himself has said in the public, that's per media reports, and even in the 23 March discussion PPT, which was published in Bengaluru, even it was said that high risk, medium risk, and low risk AI system classification could be proposed. So, of course, I mean, I would be happy to unravel the contents of the bill, but in a nutshell, I would say obviously AI safety is at the heart of it because that is somehow necessary. But then again, I've been very specific to certain substantive law considerations which we could accept at the level of civil law and at the level of public law. A DPI still needs to be covered vastly, But I don't think there is anything larger in DPI to be covered from a legal perspective yet. But from a civil law perspective, a lot of things have been proposed. So I think we will unfold them as we discuss forward. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Abhivadan, for such a great insight on how the evolution has taken place. Now let me have a chat with Ajay on how the landscape was looking like with the realm of technology. So, Ajay, so what was the how did AI even come up? How did AI as a concept come? How is it over the years? How has it developed? So what is AI to the public that you think of? Because according to my opinion, I mean, at least the way I see it, the way I see the how the market is responding to it, AI was just nothing but data where it was produced in various formats like analytics and certain use applications. But the real power of AI, what I have understood is after the rise of ChatGPT or generative AI to be in specific. So that is where people actually understood what AI could do. So I would like to I would like you to throw up some light on that in terms of how AI started, and at that time, I mean, how has it evolved, and how do you see the development? Yeah, I'll just pause.
Yeah, so that's a bit of an interesting question because AI has a enormous history. I mean, in people's minds, they might think that AI is something very recent, right? But that couldn't be further from the truth. AI actually has its roots from the during the Second World War. I think there have been attempts at automating a lot of things using computers, using technology since that time. 1945, and it started again with war, right? So you can a classic example that we learn is analyzing how many bullets you have to shoot. The Americans or the British army armed forces, how many bullets they had to shoot before they could bring down an airplane from Nazi Germany. So this is where the classical data analysis began, and then more and more methods that were used to do this. And we came up with these fancy things, which is called classical machine learning, where we have regression analysis, which is very popular these days, these words, regression analysis, logistic regression analysis. And these are very simple methods to just look at the available data and catch some patterns in there. But at the time, we did not have as much compute power as we do today. And because of that, even though there were methods that were theoretically proposed, the classic neural network that we know today, the artificial neural network, it was proposed a long time ago, but it could not be put in practice because of computational limitations, right? So we had something called as the AI winter. So we had two AI winters before the AI boom began. I think AI boom begins from 1990, and especially after 2010, when AlexNet, the first neural network that could do image classification, began. Right, and to answer your question, what is AI to the people, in any society? I think this is my opinion because I've been in the field of AI, and especially in the field of AI and healthcare. AI is just any other tool that you have, in any other that is commodified by any other brand or any other company. It's just another tool. It's like this iPhone, or it's like the computer that I'm talking to you over. Of course, it's a new technology, and it might seem so awesome and all of this, but fundamentally, all of these AI models, they only do one thing and one thing only. They try and understand the distribution of your data. Whatever data you throw at it, it tries to understand what this data is about, and it tries to model this data in a certain way so that now you can generate new things from this. So that is fundamentally what it is. And these have, they have pros and cons. They have limitations. They have flaws, like any other commodity in the market. And I think as the market drives, there's a demand supply thing. Uh, the AI safety and regulation thing is automatically integrated when the market comes into the picture. As researchers, I mean, for me, AI safety is not, it's my last, it's on the last priority, especially when I'm developing algorithms, not when I'm applying it in my clinics. Uh, but the safety part is automatically put in place because of the market requirement. And I think AI is, yeah, just like any other uh, tool or any other commodity that you would purchase yeah, yeah, with any company.
Yeah, thank you, Ajay, for the wonderful insights. In fact, I just read a tweet or some thread, I think LinkedIn or Facebook, I'm not very sure. I saw a post, it was a series of back-to-back messages where someone said that Elon Musk, interestingly, is now trying to understand and trying to envision the idea of GPUs over the Tesla car. So, I mean, even while even as we talk, I'm just thrilled by that idea. So, as you said, we don't have enough compute power, or there is heavy infrastructure that is required to do all this. So, I'm just looking at this idea that was shared on the social media. So what do you think? Your comments on that, Ajay?
Yeah, we cannot have enough compute, to be honest. More compute. If we have more compute, I think as a field or as a community of AI researchers, we will definitely progress. Um, yeah, I mean, it's more compute is better, and if you integrate these systems with your whatever data, right, any kind of real world data, it could be when you're driving, you collect a bunch of data, you just take a walk in the field, you have a watch on your wrist. It is so, I mean, AI is inevitably already penetrated your lives. You might not like it, but it's already there. And if we have more of this, in terms of hardware and smarter software, it is better for humanity in a collective sense.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So now let me move on to Sanjay sir before I mean I'll come back to you, Ajay. So sir, you have been practicing in the trade law space for so many years. So, what are your initial thoughts on this bill in terms of the trade aspects? How do you think? Okay, let me frame the questions better. So, the first question is, what are your thoughts as an advisor to Israel as well? So, what are your first comments on, and how do you think this bill is different, or how it is shaped up compared to the other legislations that are coming up? And the second question that I would like to ask is, when you look at the international trade law and how what is trade between how is trade even defined, and when it comes to digital world, when it comes to AI, how AI defines trade, and what is traded across the nations. So, if you could just throw us light on that, that will help the audience to understand how, uh, I mean, from a physical world to a digital world, and how AI is going about. Yeah.
So thanks, Kapil. I think before I get on to answering your questions, I think first let me go back to what both Abhivardhan and Ajay have put on the table. Uh, one is the history part of it, one is the evolving part of it, one is whatever part of it. But let me come and discuss from an international trade perspective. I think that answers, unfortunately, none of us have, because clearly we have to see yet the potential of AI and how exactly what it can do for all of us. Only last said the better. It keeps on only one thing which I keep on sort of finding on the Google, whether lawyers are going to be threatened by AI. So uh, forget about that issue first. But uh, I like the way Ajay put it. It's any other iPhone, it's any other technology. It was always there. Now people are talking about it. Now companies are talking about it. Everybody's talking about it because that's the trend. AI is the trend. Now, let's go step back. Exactly What are we talking about? Whatever technologies you talk about, whether it is a deep fake, whether it is a privacy, whether it's a blockchains, what exactly as a common man am I worried about? Because ultimately, if I'm a lawyer and I need to represent somebody in the court, or the judges need to understand this thing, or the regulators need to understand this thing, or the people who are sitting at the helm of affairs of various sectors who are sitting on it, what are we all asking? Simple questions. And basically, those are the principles that we need to go down to. And those principles remain issues or principles on safety, security. What are we doing? Transparency and explainability, because ultimately we need to understand and be explain exactly whatever it is. Uh, we can talk about accountability, because that again is one of the core issues of stuff. And last and not the least, everything around it. What are the regulatory environments or regulatory requirements in order to talk about all of this? So I think the, the manner in which I would like to look at this issue, and I would leave the bill for Abhivardhan to talk about it, but clearly, if I need to look at it in the most simple and a granular perspective, I think these are the sets of questions. And I'll just take a minute more. Today, when we talk about privacy, today we talk about AI, we talk about any technology. These are the basic ground principles that all of us need answers about. Now, what could be true in a privacy is also true in an AI. The manner of the manner in which one could sort of take precedence, or one could take a higher proportion versus the lower proportion in certain sort of parameters or principles which we are talking, is only that is what will go up and down. All other things, dehorse of any other discussion we are talking, still remains the same. So not sort of going into any critique, not into going into anybody's wawa. I think we need to sort of discuss very, very simple things that today, if Ajay is from a tech perspective, we are from a legal perspective, how do we sort of open this discussion, which helps us to, unfortunately, he's a coding man. Unfortunately, we are a guys who only understand regulation and sections and rules. I think that's the discourse that we could sort of leave it on the table. So those are the certain principles which we can leave it. And I think that is the way we will move forward. So pretty much that's for now to set the context.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure, sir. That's definitely what we would look. Ajay, so you had raised.
Yeah,
You wanted to say something?
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was very nice, because the last bit that you said, where yeah, I'm a coding guy. I just understand software. I understand a little bit of mathematics. I understand technology, but I do not understand, in the clinic, what is the doctor looking at? How do they do the diagnostics? I have no clue. And the relationship of the doctors with the patients, that is the real thing, and that is where it's actually eventually going to end up in, right? So I also have this problem when I communicate with my supervisor, one of whom is a clinician, and it's, I think we mean the same things. Sanjay sir, when you spoke about regulation and privacy and all of this, we mean the same things, but our language is different. When I talk about privacy, I have a very grounded, software sort of a very hardcore answer, notion of privacy, or a notion of how do I say, data security. But when it translates to a lawyer, or when you're talking to defending a common man, then the context is very different, and you don't need these very hardcore definitions like us. And that's where it gets tricky, and it's the communication is always, it's just an evolving field. I agree with you completely on that.
Okay. Okay. So let me let's look at the couple of points that Sanjay sir and Ajay you have said. So we let's first talk about privacy, which is the fundamental aspect of any technology or any ground up that we are looking at, right? Because India has currently passed its privacy bill, and which is likewise any other every other nation is also passing their privacy bills. From a law to technology and technology to point of view. So I would like to pose questions to both of you, Ajay and Sanjay sir. So when we look at the when we look at privacy as a law, and when you look at privacy as as a protection measure or something that could be part of your design elements in this from the system. So Ajay, so if you have to come up with, so how do you actually code, as in when you look at the when you have to code something uh, which is part of your design, which is part of your plan of action. So do you encompass, I mean, do you visualize the privacy there, the data protection part of it, as in from a technology and from a protocol point of view? And when it comes to cyber security, which is another domain by itself, which is not looked at by any businesses, because cyber security is a very important domain that most businesses currently ignore. I mean, yesterday there was an incident, I think 2 days back, Taj hotels, where there's so much of close to 1.5 million data is being leaked. See, I still feel that even data, even if how many our legislations or how many our sections that we interpret as lawyers, and how many whatever compliances that we enforce on these platforms or developers or companies, why is there a lacuna out there when it comes to privacy breach? So what are are we missing something in terms of security measure, and how do you see it, Ajay?
Definitely. So, in terms of security of data, I think any community, for example, I'm not even talking about research community, right? I'm talking about businesses, and I'm talking about governments. They have not looked at it pragmatically so far, because uh, what is data at the end? At the end, it's a server farm where a bunch of ones and zeros are sitting in these servers, and there is a server administrator who is responsible for maintaining this. But only recently, we because larger and larger amounts of data, if you walk into an institution like AIMS in India, you have an enormous amount of patient data, clinical data, that is just sitting there, in terms of it might be in files, it might be in cupboards, it might be in computers, it's just sitting there, right? And because of AI, because we are deciding now to use AI to understand patient diagnostics, or I'm just talking from the perspective of medical healthcare and AI, right? So I do not know much about other fields of AI. So if this is the case, then you have to understand one thing, that the moment you decide to do these things, then you're automatically slightly compromising the privacy of the patient. Because if you come to me and you ask me to make an algorithm that can detect cancers, but if you give me the patient's tissue images, then automatically I'm looking at the tissue, right? It's quite literally a piece of from the patient's body. So there, I already have sort of compromised on the privacy of the patient. But we can take measures in the sense that me personally, who is developing these algorithms, I do not know anything about the patient, so I can be blinded to these things. So I can just be given this image, and I can be blinded to these things. So that's one thing that could be easily done. So privacy is not um, compromised, but it is also sort of handled in a way that we can manage it, where we have both these technology and where we can also respect the privacy of the individual. That's one thing. And the other thing is, if you have more sensitive data, for example, if you have genetic data, right? Genetic data is something which should be protected at all costs. And I mean, even though you develop these algorithms or anything, if you look at a person's germline genetics, you already know everything about this person, right? Just by looking at the germline mutations or whatever they have. You know everything, pretty much everything, the way that they look, the color of their skin, if they have hair or not, the kind of muscular composition of the everything. You can know pretty much everything from them, from just by looking at this small piece of data. And when it comes to things like this, if they're paired up, if there is a server farm where you have all of the patient data there accumulated, you have to sort of separate them and create a redundancy where if you get one, let's say you get the images as a hacker, I'm not talking from the perspective of the person who's trying to steal data, right? It should not be possible for me to steal both of those data points together. If I have the one, it is useless on its own. And if I have the other, it is also useless on its own. And you should have these sort of redundant systems in place. And unfortunately, companies, it's a lot of infrastructure, it's a lot of money to do this, and that is why they don't do this. They don't want to do this at this point of time. But it's very important that we do it. Yeah.
That's a great insight that you've shared. Sanjay sir, coming to you. So when we look at Ajay's examples of the data, I mean, as he has explained us about the tissue of when the tissue details are shared. So are we? So what is that? So that's a data that has to be flowing into the system. So how do we as lawyers view it? Because you can't always prevent data that is. Right, because there, unless you share something, unless you have the data, the system will not be able to respond to it, right? So are we, so what is the, so how are we going to look, how are we going to battle this gap? Yeah.
So let me just put one more theory forward, and my theories are all absolutely very very simple theories. What are we doing? We are into is this virtuous circle. What is this virtuous circle? I am a patient today. I go to the doctor. The doctor does whatever he needs to sort of do as per his medical purposes, standards. But there is clearly some sort of a human call which he needs to take, whether this decision is right, wrong, or whatever it is. Okay, which is basically holding your nerves and saying, this is what I think is the problem. That's it. Now, let us say subsets of all these 15, 20 of us is gone and given into Ajay. Okay. Now, the first question is, uh, did the doctor tell us exactly what is he going to do with my asking my nerves, taking all my data, whether the decisions what he took towards me, are they correct or not correct? I have no idea about it. Okay. But unfortunately, in 5 cases, the doctor or whatever the patient's analysis which he did is wrong. And for 10 patients, it is correct. Now that data goes to Ajay. Now, what is Ajay doing? Ajay is taking the data, whether it is personal, not personal, privacy, and whatever it is. His algorithm is going to read all those 15 and come out with some sort of a result. Correct? Now, that result is something that we are looking to use in our day-to-day life. Now, Ajay comes back at AIMS and says, you buggers are wasting your time. Don't go through one data. I have got this particular tool which will help you to forecast and say if the patients belong to such, type and whatever those parameters are, I can forecast clearly that these guys are affected by them. Now, stop for a minute. Can I blame Ajay? Whatever the data and the analysis he's got, he's absolutely right. He has done only coding, and his coding and algorithms are just trying to read sort of sets of records, putting it together and coming out with some sort of an output which he thinks he understands the best. What is the doctor doing? The doctor is doing exactly the same thing. He's also using the data of 15 people, and what he may have thought is right could be wrong, what is wrong could be right, and he's also aggregating it and putting it together. What are we doing as patients? We are also going rightfully to the. So, in all of this, I think what we need to do is come out with some sort of a basic uh, norms on ethics, on privacy, on the meaning of, again, I'm using the word accountability, and some of these things where, because we are exactly a virtuous circle in the sense we are holding each other's hand, data and all this, and trying and reading. Now, if there is an error, for the lack of better word, The question is who has done that error, and that is what the regulators and lawyers and the judges and governments want to find out. That's it.
So essentially, to sum up your statement, so basically we are looking at the process of how data is being looked at and how it is being dealt, how it is shared, right?
Yeah, so pretty much there are gaps. There are certain sort of things which are required to fill those gaps. Lack of a better word, there are certain cavities which we need to sort of fill it up in order to sort of bring the road absolutely clear, crisp, uh, and motorable road rather than the bumpy road which today we are on, because everybody is holding each other's hand and thinking, oh, this is what it is. But no, sorry, I think we need a little more coherence, a little more cooperation, a little more thinking about all of these. And I think then coming to this, because let me be very and this is not with due respect to whatever all the data scientists are doing, whatever the tech companies are doing, but I think everybody right now is unfortunately in this corporate AI race to say what I am doing is the only way to take it forward. Now, that is something which I think we need to sort of hold on to.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Ajay, you have something to say?
So precisely, I agree completely with Sanjay ji. So one thing is that any exercise, right, when you come to these large scale systems that have a large scale impact on humanity, the first thing that you have to do is you have to cut the clutter, that Sanjay ji really said, and then you build a consensus. A lot of people, from different fields, come together and they really analyze what they're doing before it actually is applied in the real world. They come together, they think about what they're doing, and they test out these theories. They do some experiments that are simple in nature, and then once you are fairly confident that, hey, this works, only then you do a pilot project and then you go on. This is how clinical trials work. And I can also give you a simple example from the early days when control systems were being developed, right? So today, I think more than the 90% of if you take a flight, more than 90% of the duration of the flight is autopilot, right? And autopilot is a very simple control system algorithm that runs your aeroplane quite safely, to be honest, today. And if you were in the 1940s and the aeroplanes are relatively new and you are a common citizen, and somebody like me comes to you and says, hey, I have this very great algorithm that can automatically fly planes, they would be scared of you. They would say you're going to destroy humanity. That's a very likely thing for a person back in the 1940s to say, right? I think we are today at that place, especially with the general society and people like me. This is also because people don't understand what we are trying to do. It's all, it's like a hush hush. It's like a black box. It's magic. So that understanding needs to be built, and there should be a consensus that should come about in society, and then everybody knows, hey, this is okay. We can go ahead with it, and then we apply. Kapil, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so fantastic perspectives, Jay. So now quickly, let's get back to the core discussion on the bill. Let's unravel the key components of the bill, how it is being done. So, yeah, Abhivadan, could you just give us a full view of the bill, as in terms of the chapters? What are the chapters that you have drafted? And how it is different from the EU Act as well.
Right. Thank you so much. I think I've been following the discussion very keenly, and I agree with the perspective that a lot of hype comes out when it comes to, both regulatory ethics and technology commercialization, right? Founders or specialists just coming out, okay, fine. What are we developing is the only way forward. is that one bubble. And obviously the second bubble is obviously we need to regulate everything without even realizing as to what are the specific contours, what are the industry effects, what are the network effects and everything. So well, the bill is available at aiact.in. If somebody could go through the bill, they would actually find a lot of substantive law provisions, and I'll be very specific on what they are. From a conceptual point of view, um, I have been very specific on, providing certain aspects. Like, of course, there is obviously an understanding of risk. Now, in one of the meetings which I had with my colleagues at ISAIL, members at ISAIL, somebody asked me a question. Whenever we examine a risk in a legal aspect, you know, it always comes from a policy point, right? That is how you say, okay, fine, this is standardizable, this is recognizable under law, therefore, this is what it is. So, as we know, something which is a risk, can we really classify on the basis of outcome or on the basis of technical features of an AI system? Now, a better answer to the question is that the approach this whole bill takes is that the focus is on the outcomes of an action rather than the technical features. Because again, if we look at the Bletchley Declaration or any of these documents, the G7 Hiroshima framework or whatnot, we see a problem that there's a lot of haste among governments and multilateral bodies to come up with a random AI document. And a lot of MNCs and a lot of companies are not clear about some bylaws or some standards at the first place, which is very simple to say that when you're developing a product for a particular sector or industry or for multi-sectoral use cases, how will it actually work and how much should someone as a vendor or a customer or a third party should know. That is something which I have obviously addressed. Some concepts which are interesting in the bill are including, an insurance policy framework for AI development, which is again very new to an Indian ecosystem because this is something which was not possible yet. I'm not sure, but still, from an R&D point of view, at least, I think it could be a safe bet if we are promoting a better compute infrastructure, because this is something which even the likes of Infosys and others have requested to the government that at least a compute infrastructure should be given to promote DPI as well as emerging AI startups, like you did with Atal Innovation Mission and India Stack. So this is something which obviously is there. Then there is an issue with generative AI which I have tried to deal with. So a lot of you are aware that Hollywood was accused of making movies or videos out of generative AI tools to replicate the actors who have already played in the past shows and movies. Now imagine somebody who is already in the field, but their whole identity is being surmised by an AI tool that actually takes away their basic, I would say, working rights and a lot of aspects of autonomy and skills per se. If you're using generative AI tools and just modulating their voice or their images or their videos or howsoever they're represented, even in VR, right? So when sophisticated applications like these come, it actually becomes difficult to differentiate between what is generative AI content and what is non-generative AI content. Now, in the text aspect, we have already lost the race because unless you have a sense of understanding in writing, unless it is a very deep down specific know-how approach, it's not going to work out because the content marketers have exploited ChatGPT, Bard, and all these tools way back before, which is why a lot of people are now worried why universities are not giving good assignments and why a lot of assignments published by students in various fields, not just law, not just tech, not just policy, are copied, which again is a different issue. But again, content provenance and watermarking is a very good way for visual content and even for other sorts of B2B generative AI use cases. So some framework has been proposed that you can have some technical aspects which you could use as a differentiator in the AI ecosystem, like like an ecosystem of certain features and certain technical aspects which are behind the outputs. So I think that is something which becomes essentially important. Okay, so content provenance is for sure there, and watermarking. Like for example, putting noise in a particular generative AI output, a system could actually differentiate if it is a human output or a generative AI output. That's a basic level aspect which we have provided in the bill. Another
Mhm.
aspect is obviously about AI hyping and competition law issues, which is very simple. You produce a market or you do marketing of a product using AI. Are you causing a sort of hype which is going to misinform people, cause information overload, or cause information warfare, or those kind of things? Um, how will you address that aspect? So, of course, that is definitely a part of the bill. Um, I see that I think Mr. Notani is not in the meeting. I think he will join in a shorter while. Maybe there's some network issues, but I hope I'm audible to all of you. If I may continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So obviously competition law is there, but I'll not broaden on that much because there's just guiding principles, not particular bill provision. Yeah, he's back. So
Okay.
apart from that, I think content provenance is important. Insurance policy is there. Some aspects of skill security have been put up. For example, you're hiring developers and so-called prompt engineers, and we don't even know what is a what is the job of a prompt engineer. Somebody is hyping on Insta and all those platforms that okay, you have some 6 lakh LPA job for a prompt engineer for Anthropic or OpenAI, which again is like asking a customer to use OpenAI's ChatGPT for free, right? So obviously, a little aspect of skill security at a very basic level could be started with. But then again, I think this would we have drafted not taking into consideration the capacity problem of the Indian bureaucracy, because there was a very interesting proposition by a former IFS. I think it was Ambassador Bhatia, who has worked with the MEA on various projects related to Indian foreign policy when it comes to USA or Europe. He actually suggested that there's something called the Indian Digital Service. It's like a bureaucracy specifically catered, maybe under the Ministry of IT, for digital service related works, which is what the Data Protection Act says, techno legal regulation, digital workspace, and all those things. So there is some practicality to it, but we have not addressed that yet because we are of the view that first, at least the substantive aspects should be properly channelized, because that is not happening in India at all. A lot what is happening is there are basic discussions happening, but there's no discourse for a standardization because it can't start with the government, unfortunately. State governments are also not doing it effectively, sadly. So it's better for market players to at least come up with something and make things happen. But some basic aspects obviously have been proposed for sure. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Abhivardhan, for a great unraveling of the bill. Actually, very interestingly, on the point that you highlighted on skill security and the prompt engineering, as you said, what is there and how it is done. So, very interestingly, back 6 to 8 months back when I was in my LLM at Jindal, so I had to write my dissertation. Very interestingly, I used, technically I was not supposed to use ChatGPT or any other generative AI, but that actually helped me a lot in terms of completing my dissertation. So I actually understood the art of using generative AI versus the my fellow mates at the college when they used. So I could completely understand. So the prompt engineering which actually lies with all of us actually um I was lucky enough to not get caught, but a couple of them actually got into that AI detection tool caught them. So I think it's just a skill set that is going to come up, and I think I'm sure Sanjay sir will be also looking at these people. This is an important skill when he hires for lawyers for his firm. Maybe use of generative AI and how lawyers are efficiently using it, and it's very importantly you also don't infringe on content, right? So that's going to be another key challenge. It's not just going ahead even the irrespective of the profession, irrespective of the domain, skill set on prompt engineering or use of generative AI, how a user utilizes this is going to be a very interesting and I mean it's a skill set that one develops. So yeah, Ajay, you have something to say. I guess.
I have a question for Abhivardhan because I was reading his bill and
Please.
it's quite extensive, and I have
Yeah.
to congratulate him on that and his team for this. It's very nice. So I have a couple of
Thank you.
maybe the first question, and then we can. I don't know if you have the time, but I can also take it offline. The one question is that you have mentioned in page 36 in your inferences before you give the inferences to a particular thing. You say there is a lack of clarity on joint ventures IP ownership. So this is an important bit which also concerns me, right? And I'm asking this because from point of view of my future and all of this. Let's say tomorrow I come back to India, and then I set up a AI healthcare company, and for this I will obviously need data, right, to train my models and whatever. So I might be writing the coding, but a lot of things that I do, I mean, at least like 40% of my job depends on other people. So I need someone to give me the data. In this case, it would be the government, or it could be a private institution which holds patient data. And I need this infrastructure that I have to set up, which may be coming from my own money. So in this case, right? So what do I have the ownership to? Do I have the ownership to the data, or do I have the ownership to the software that I've built? But even then, the software itself is somehow has learned from the data, right, that I got. So this is a tricky situation, and I just want to understand your.
Hmm.
I'm sure you have not given. You mentioned it in your report that there is no clarity that you have not proposed it. But what do you think? As an opinion.
So that's a very interesting question. I'll just deal with it quickly for you. Okay. See, when I actually went through the India AI Expert Group report, first edition, okay, there's actually a mention of centers of excellence. Okay. Now, when we look at the concept of centers of excellence in IPR model, the one problem we see is a lot of bureaucratic conceptualization has been given. And the concept of the NDMO, National Data Management Office, it's all about data management. And I think in your case also, if there are certain aspects which do not involve personal data, of course, there will be sensitive data, but it does not need to be obviously all the time personal data. There will be certain non-personal sensitive data as well. Even in that case, let us say, I think the complication is that the IPR model standardization is something which just can't be done through a mere bureaucratic creation. That you just have these board of governors and centers of excellence through IITs or whatnot, or even otherwise across regions, which is I think the lacuna we find in the India AI report. Now, for intellectual property, in the bill itself, there's actually a set of provisions we have proposed, which is about model approach, which is not technically an IP law issue, but more of I would say, a knowledge management issue. So let me just point that out. It's actually related to knowledge management, where we say that certain knowledge management practices have to be endorsed, and it's actually section 8, which might interest you a lot.
Can you tell me the page
Uh,
number?
Sure. It's actually, if you're reading the 170 page report, then it's somewhere else. But in the AI Act.in, it's page number 9. But it's
Okay.
section 8. Actually, you can search it through. Let me, because there's a separate document I created for this. So, I mean, it's section 8. You can look at through later. The one aspect we said was that obviously at the level of corporate governance, your corporate governance, basic level, what you want to do, some internal practices could be adopted. But what I think is, and even I'll give a specific reference, if you'd say the Data Protection Act, right, which actually covers the personal data, no, largely it covers personal data,
Yeah.
only personal data in many ways. We actually see a thing that uh, a lot of aspects of liability is actually on the data fiduciary, but not on data processors directly, which means that a lot of it starts with a contractual sense of relationship between the one who's processing the data, who is a separate company if that happens, and of course in terms of what is a data fiduciary. Now in your case, if you would be processing it, then of course the difference doesn't lie. But I think one logical aspect that would come up it is it's a definitely a market problem. But what specifically could be dealt is a lot of self-standardized practices for your own venture could be helpful to justify your own compliance, to justify your own approach.
Yeah.
But I think that also comes from an aspect of awareness of the ecosystem and everything, how other market ecosystems react to, which is also important. It happens in the case of space tech as well. So I hope that answers your question, but I think we can take this after the panel for sure, maybe in certain aspects. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a key point that I'd like to discuss as a last point for the day is on insurance. So I think section 20 talks about insurance, right, Abhivadan?
If yeah,
Okay.
it does, yes.
Okay, so I'll just post it comment, or whoever wants to pick it up and answer it could help us could throw light on that. So, see, when we look at insurance, there are many types of insurance, right? Health insurance, car insurance, and liabilities. Where I mean, for example, even the IT companies, when they have to sign up contracts, and when there are services that are being delivered, so there comes the contract. There comes a liability policy that are being issued. So when we look at AI in particular, what are the liabilities that can occur, and how do you structure that contract? How does the insurance work out here? And when it comes to transnational, how does the insurance work out there?
Kapil, I'm so sorry. If you could just quickly repeat the question, there's been a little bit of a network aberration from my end. I apologize. If you could just repeat the question, please.
Yeah, okay. So see, when we look at the insurance domain, we have multiple policies, right? So when we are looking at insurance in terms of when we are looking at liability clauses, the all the IT companies that does services, and they actually protect they have a liability clause that gets insured, right? So when we look at AI led products, AI led services, and when you insure it, when you have insurance policies or insurance contracts, that part of the AI bill. So how do you how is it operational? How does it even get how does it get I mean, wait, let me okay, so how does it come into force with AI related products? Is it pretty much the same, or does it have any other difference? Because when we look at AI, there are many aspects, as you mentioned, in high risk systems, right? So do you have classifications accordingly, like low risk system, high risk system? And when it comes to transnational services like cross border data, I mean cross border sharing of data as well, how does that come into force, and who gets the support? I mean, how does that work out here? Yeah.
Right. So I would be very honest with you. The substantive, the very section 20 is again something to be improved upon, but at a very basic level, because again, at a transnational level, this law can't cover. It would be then a specific insurance law issue. It would be not just then a technology and insurance law issue, right? At a specific level, there's obviously paragraph 2 or subsection 2 of section 20, in which the coverage domain has been covered, as to what actually it could cover, the insurance policy for AI. First, obviously, is technical failure. Second is data breaches, and third is accidents. Right now, the second and third are more or less related to generic technologies or generic digital services, and I think there are certain requirements in the DPDPA which could be interpreted. Maybe new guidelines could come up. The first one actually gets interesting, which is technical failures, because there's obviously a proposition from my end that there should be a schedule designating what is a high risk system, what is a low risk system, what is an unintended risk system, and what is a medium risk system. If that is done, then of course in that case the scope of technical failures could extend. But when I had drafted this, the larger intent was actually related to R&D related issues, and sometimes at the level of just developing a technology and testing it, prototyping it, so that entrepreneurs are encouraged to go ahead and certain aspects of cost issues are addressed. At the level of commercialization, it could be a different problem altogether. Because again, if we really want a healthy AI ecosystem in India, which where we produce good solutions, then I think the paradigm changes, and perhaps in the coming months we would try to amend and make changes in the proposition of the bill, so that certain granular aspects could be addressed. But at a substantive level, I think technical failure is what would actually cover a lot of issues related to AI, but even data breaches could cover when it comes to personal data and non-personal data. So that's my 2 cents on section 20.
Yeah. Lisa, do you have anything to say on it? Likewise, Ajay.
Yes, so I have I do not know much about insurance, but if I understand it correctly, you mean if I make an AI product and someone is hiring my services using that product, how are they insured against it? If I make a mistake, if my product makes a mistake, is the customer insured? Do I understand it right when I say yeah, right? So okay, so in this case, from the point of view of technology, right? So yes, of course, there is always a room of error, room for error, and then things go wrong. Things do go wrong,
Hmm.
and it could be
Yeah.
due to two reasons. It could be due to two reasons. One reason
Yeah.
is that we, as designers of this product, we have not considered a particular scenario where it is failing, or they might be
Yes.
willful fraud or some, for some reason, and this happens quite often. And
Correct.
then this is
Yes.
a standard thing, and I think lawyers do their jobs the best. Technologists, I wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't do something like this. But yes, companies are known to do these things, and I
So,
think lawyers play a very important role when this happens. So yes, I think
so
yeah.
Yes.
yeah, I think what Ajay is saying, let me be very honest with you that when Ajay comes back to India and he puts a company like this, very, very simpliciter, I think he will first have to hire a lawyer who will write reams and reams of terms and conditions, saying to the best of my knowledge, my information, whatever I've collected is blah, 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 in the black and white. If tomorrow there is a sort of a breach of anything or there is a whatever, ultimately, when we go down to Ajay's algorithm, I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think we will be able to find any problem because coding is a coding. What you have coded and what are the inputs and what are the outputs, it's basically a mechanical
Hmm.
uh, code. Now, the question is the data, what is fed in, is what is to be tested. Now, whether that data to be tested, is it right, wrong? Uh, had he taken all the right steps before taking the data, feeding it into the system? Who gave the data, the quality of the data? All of those kinds of things, which is where the problem starts. And to that extent, if he has protected himself, to say that, I'm not responsible for the data which was fed in, and this is, however, this is a sort of a AI sort of a solution which gives that. That's it. Question
Yeah.
is now whether how it is used and what has happened. And, those are the kinds of things. This is where the meat of the lawyers will come in to try and see how do we sort of take care of things like this. And for that, uh, I don't think there is anything different of what insurance and AI. Let me be very honest with you. Like, to start with, it has always been there. First, it was graphical, mechanical, whatever it is. Now it is software. Tomorrow it will be AI. Liabilities are liabilities. The question is, was there a mischief? Was there a fraud? Was there a negligence? I think those terms stand wherever it is. All other things may change.
Yeah. So, yeah, if I'm just to address both the points and the questions at my best, if I'm audible. Um, see, one aspect obviously is that there are, a lot of issues could be limited to data breaches and data protection problems. At that level, it could be a game over. Fine, okay, there are certain aspects of liabilities could be addressed, and I think at that level, the insurance related issues could come in for lawyers. I think when you talk about the fact that AI systems are actually, being developed, and there are obviously their own technical nuances behind At a commercial level, it actually would vary. But definitely, if we have a sector specific angle, then things would be much clearer to understand. For example, you're using an AI tool for content marketing, and you're using it for content marketing of something called an FMCG product. And you're hoping that the chatbot, which is developed by you, is going to work out and it's going to help. And somehow the chatbot misinforms about you or does certain things which are not expected it to be, or there are some technical aspects. Could they be designated as technical failures or not? So obviously, data itself is a very core instrument here, which is why data breaches or data related issues of course would be there. But technical failures could also be subject to how much at an industrial level, whether for customers or clients or governments or organizations with larger weight or different specific context, how does it work in their cases? Obviously it would vary. For customer it would be a very different issue, because how much a vendor or a customer is being affected. Of course that could be the case, you know but I think this also could be addressed in a specific manner. But I think that's the purpose of this bill. This bill is obviously saying that it is sector neutral, but these are principles again. And at a sector specific level, actually things would get more interesting. So I think that's where I would, pause or stop.
Okay. That's fantastic. I think that brings us to the end of the discussion. And so let me just give a quick sum up of what we have done for the day. And so the history that Ajay had given us, that gave us a good outlook of how the evolution of AI had come up. And when we look at the trade aspect, which is status quo, as Sanjay sir said, and I think it will be we will get to know how it develops when we have more legislations and more AI systems that are in place. And of course, the privacy are the key aspects that we have been discussing, which is just subject to evaluation and as a practices, because what we look at I mean, what we are looking at is just the legislation and of course the business practices and the process at which it is done. These are all key elements that will give us I mean, that will evolve and which will ensure better systems in place. And of course the insurance that we had discussed now, which gives us a good idea of how it could be developed in terms of how systems could when we look at the high risk systems, especially how it could be ensured, and what are the process, and how this domain, I mean, how AI systems could be processed. And so as Abhimandan mentioned, when it comes to technical failures, looking at the at multiple levels, so how these are operational in nature. So the time will have to tell us how it will be done. So yeah, that brings us to end of the discussion. And any other questions from the panelists to each other? So
uh, well, I would suggest if we would address this after the session is done, you know and we
okay,
could
sure.
actually have a more frank conversation on this. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thank you all for a wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much, Kapil.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Kapil. Thank you, Abhimandan. Thank you, Sanjay sir. It was a nice discussion.